Welcome to War Never Changes, everyone. This is a special interview episode. We're taking a break from our normal narrative to do something a little different. With me today is Elliot Shanley and the legendary Jonah Lobe. Jonah Lobe has been a character artist with Bethesda, working on Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and Skyrim. He's worked on various projects, and we're looking forward to hear what he's currently working on and ask him a few questions. So, welcome, Jonah Lobe, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for having me on. Yeah, my pleasure. This is already we're having fun. We're having some good conversation before this even started. So let's kick it off. Let's talk Fallout.
Awesome. So do you want to kind of give the listeners a little bit of a history of how you got started with Bethesda and like kind of what you worked on, and just fill us in a little bit?
Bethesda was 2005, the end of 2005 when I got a job at Bethesda. So Bethesda was not nearly as big as it is now.
Okay.
And it was on the verge of, but had not yet released Oblivion.
Oh.
And so that's when I joined. And so my first job working on at there was basically the Shivering Isles and those DLCs for Oblivion. I didn't get to work on Oblivion itself. I asked, I was like, can I just like add like a spoon to the game, like just a spoon, just so I can do something? And Todd was like, no, if you put anything in, the game will break. Like, absolutely not. And I was like, shit. Okay. So it was pretty cool then, because I got to join the company, and for the first like month and a half, maybe even like 2 months, the whole point of everyone was just like to play test the game and search for bugs.
Okay.
And it was like all hands on deck. Everyone's playing the game all the time, recording all your bugs, and like programmers are playing whack-a-mole as best they can. And so I got a sweet job there as a character artist, but it was my job just to like play games for the first 2 months. And I was like, yes, this is fun.
That is super fun.
And then after Shivering Isles is when I started working on Fallout 3. And in fact, my art test for getting a job at Bethesda was a picture of a raider. And I didn't know, they didn't say what it was from, but they were like, make this in 3D. And I was looking at it, I was like, what? Why does this look so familiar to me? Like, why is this is like Mad Max? This is kind of what, and then I was like, is this Fallout? Like, is this Fallout? And Todd was like, yep. And I was like, oh my God. So then, yeah, Fallout 3 was the first game I worked on from start to finish. Yeah. And I did most of the creatures in that game.
Super cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I got to like basically, I have a YouTube video about it, about that, what that process was like. But essentially, and it's called like designing the creatures for Fallout 3 and 4, and it's like an in-depth about that. Basically, like, yeah, I got to just kind of jump in and take a lot of the old art from Fallout 1 and 2, and then the concept art for Fallout 3, and like try to figure out like how do you like up-res this game, and how do you make it 3D, and how do you do justice to the designs that have come before, while also like making any, adding your own personal touch to it and making any improvements that you can think of. Because, as classic as a game like Fallout 1 and 2 is, it's like any game. It was made by a finite number of people with a finite budget on a finite timeline, and you can't get everything right. And so like I think, especially when we're working with kind of older, like, arguably in some ways like a little bit janky software like Fallout 1 and 2, like you're talking about like being able to jump back into that franchise and give things another go is a huge opportunity. Because we're talking about, like now I get to make a fully life-size like Rad Scorpion, when in the first game it was like 32 pixels wide, and now I get to
definitely.
So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure that I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be a fan of something like that and then be able to work on it. That sounds like a dream come true.
It was really cool, and because I'd only played Fallouts before that at like sleepovers at my friend's house, because he had like Fallout, so I never like got to like play it too much on my own. But like whenever I went to his house, I was like, I can play Fallout. Like, oh shit. So it felt very like almost like personal at the time, even though Fallout's a major franchise. Even back then, I was still like, wait, I've played this game. I get to remake it. Like that's wild to me, you know. And at the time when the original ones would come out, like it was like CD-ROM graphics. Like they were just like it wasn't candy colored Atari looking shit. It was like photorealistic, you know, like as far as you could get back then. And so kind of blew my mind.
Gotcha. Um, the question I had for you was when you were talking about how you did most of the creatures in Fallout 3 or all of them. There's
Not
been
all
a
of them,
lot,
but yeah, yeah.
a good chunk of them. You'd
Yeah.
say? Okay. There's been a lot of talks about a Fallout 3 remake.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, like, I know that as an artist myself, like, do you have any, um, for lack of a better word, like qualms of anybody else like touching your babies? You know, like is there
Yeah.
anything that's like, oh man, I wish that I could be like doing the remaster or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Or
I mean, you know,
how
when
do
you're
you feel
working
about
on
that?
Bethesda games, you're pretty used to people modding your
Oh,
material a lot. So I think more than most game companies, like I'm just used to seeing like, you know, better death claws, like more high res ghouls, like that kind of thing, you know. And sometimes it's good, a lot of times it's not because that doesn't even always speak to the quality of the modders themselves. It just means they don't have the original art assets. You know, like I made the Deathclaw, so I sculpted the Deathclaw. So I like have supreme control over what that can look like, and then they're using the end quality. Like they're using all the output from me, you know, and so like, you know, that's so. Anyways, not to say anything bad about any, you know, about modders because modders are amazing. But yes, sometimes it's funny because you're like, this is, you know, and then there's like, you know, Mirelurks with dicks, you know, that kind of thing, you know.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, welcome to the
so
internet.
yeah, no, I have no urge to jump back into working on like a Fallout 3 remake because for me, Fallout 3 was a very pivotal time in my career where it was like I said, it was the first AAA game I worked on from start to finish, and I got
Yep.
to do all these creatures.
Yeah.
And so I got to like go through the pipeline of doing that so many times and getting such cool creatures to do.
Yeah.
Um, that by the time we hit Skyrim, I was like, I felt like loaded up, you know, like I was like, now I know what I'm doing thanks to Fallout 3. So
Yeah.
Fallout 3, there's a bunch of things that I did in Fallout 3 that I wish people would redo better. There's some
Yeah.
things I think I did in Fallout 3 that like I don't think they can do better at, you know, like that. You
That's
know,
fair.
and you know, I put a lot of time, a lot of love, and you know, and a lot of effort into these creations and things like the feral ghouls, for instance
Yeah.
from Fallout 3. I didn't make them for Fallout 4. For Fallout 3, I made the feral ghouls, and they're one of my favorite things I've ever made at Bethesda. You know,
Yeah.
I was about to
they're
ask if
just
you had
like
any particular like pride in any of the assets you made for Fallout 3 when talking about it.
definitely,
Hmm.
definitely the ghouls. I just thought they had personality.
Yeah.
You know that sound they make when you walk into a room and they see you like that.
Yeah.
That was my idea, and so then they put
Oh.
that in there, and then we started doing that for more creatures after that. And I just got to it's a creature that's like at once like hideous and horrible, and there's something sad about them. You know, they're really twisted, really like you know. I even talked the animator into um, giving them little seizures. Sometimes, if you
Hmm.
ever watch a ghoul in game and it doesn't see you, and you just watch it for a while, there's a chance that it will play this like seizure animation like that.
Right. I've seen them
Um,
twitch.
yeah, the
Yeah.
twitching exactly.
Hmm.
And maybe I got that idea from like Silent Hill or something, you know, with like the shaking heads. But
Resident Evil
yeah,
does that too. Even after the zombies are like down, they still like twitch and shake, and you never
not fair,
feel really at
not
ease.
fair.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Um. Yeah. So just my history with Fallout. Fallout 3 was my first
oh,
Fallout.
nice.
And so and I'm a diehard Fallout fan, and so like Fallout 3 has a very special place in my heart. And so I went back and played all the other games and stuff. But those feral ghouls, when the first time that noise that you were just talking about scared the living hell out of me. And the first time you encounter them, I just like, oh god, okay, this went from a post-apocalyptic game to a horror game really fast.
Yes,
um,
yes, definitely. Yeah, and they add that element to it. It's like that's horror is not what the franchise is about, but they add that like flavor to it. No, I'm really happy with them. I the ants, I think I enjoyed doing. I made them look like giant ants. I was thinking retro style, like don't make them look like, we're gonna kill you, because like ants are ultimately workers, animals. They're not. They might kill you but they're gonna take your body back to the hive. They're not like voracious hunters themselves. Um, so there's nothing like special about them in any given way, but they were the first thing I did on Fallout 3. And afterwards, Todd was like, "I think the ants are the best thing that we've ever had in a video game so far." And I was like,
wow.
"What? Like you just came off of Oblivion with like all these like crazy fantasy monsters?"
Yeah,
But I think when I came onto the project, I was the one on the team. The team was small enough; it was only like 50 people. That I was the guy who was really nerdy about animals and creatures. And so when I came on, it was like it had been kind of this vacuum of like a really good character artist, and I mean more arrived after me, but like I was one of the very first to like really bring it in that role, and that was great. That was a great time to
That's
be
awesome.
a developer at Bethesda because it was very formative. Like they didn't have a level designer team until Fallout 3. They never had any kind of level designers, and so my friends Jeff and Joel they got there 6 months before I did, and nobody even knew how to use them like correctly because nobody like had used in the pipeline. Nobody had used a level designer yet, and they didn't. I don't think people quite knew what you could do with a level designer. And now, of course, you think about Fallout 3, you think about the quests of every single dungeon you go into, whether they're talking or not, the narrative design, of everything.
Yep. Yep.
That's my friends Jeff and Joel for the most part. And
That's
they
cool work.
you look at that, they were working their ass off, and you could look at it's like a quantum shift from Oblivion, where they only got to do a couple dungeons, over to Fallout 3. Suddenly the dungeon and like the quests, like level design element,
Yeah.
just goes through the roof.
Yeah. I got a text from Trevor, which he's the one that plays the Vault Dweller in our campaign, and he was asking, was there a creature whose design was so good that a team had to create an environment specifically to involve that creature?
Okay. The Fallout 4 Deathclaw was
Yeah.
probably the game changer, I think, because when I left, I knew I was leaving Bethesda, and I basically had like only like 3 months left.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I was like, I want to do the Fallout 4 Deathclaw before I leave because I did the Fallout 3 Deathclaw, but I was like a newbie, like I was like a new artist, relatively. I was in the first like 2 years of my employment or something like that. And by the time Fallout 4 was coming along and I was leaving, I was like, I've been here for 7 years. Like I could do a much better Deathclaw this time.
That's fair.
But there was no plan to include a Deathclaw at that point. They may have included them later, but they just weren't they weren't even on the schedule. They're just like, we're not a thing yet.
Thank God you were
And I was
around.
like, well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I was like, well, okay, I only have like 2, 3 months, here in DC, and then I'm gonna move to New York and like be with my girlfriend, my now wife. And I was like, all right, I'll make it at home. And so I made the Deathclaw at home, like 70% of the way. I just sculpted it. And then I brought it into work, and it was like, Todd, like, I want, like, come take a look at this. And I had him come take a look at the Fallout 4 Deathclaw, and he was like, okay, like, yep, like, make it official. Like, now you're spending like work hours on this thing. And then 2 days later, he came back and was like, so we just updated like the vertical slice like demo to include a Deathclaw fight at the end. We're gonna have a Deathclaw and a power armor face off. And I was like,
Awesome.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
They made
Yeah, I
the
was
space
gonna,
for it. Okay.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say that
which is
game.
cool because it's a little it's a it's I think the decision has pluses and minuses because I think on the one hand you're including one of the most iconic creatures in its newly upgraded look just at the moment that you get the newly upgraded power armor, and that's what you're showing to
Right.
millions of people before you give the game. but it kind of tarnishes the fear for Deathclaws a little bit because it's like, oh, I just started playing this like an hour and a half ago, and I'm already just took down a Deathclaw with a chain gun, you know?
Yeah, I was actually gonna. That was something I was gonna mention. Is so there's been a lot of talk about from the fans that the the death claws in Fallout 3 are like way harder. Like they'll kill you way
Oh
faster
yeah,
than
oh yeah,
the Fallout 4 ones.
oh yeah.
Was there? I mean, I know that you said that you didn't have that the Fallout 4 Deathclaw was kind of on your way out, but I was just wondering if you knew if there was any reasoning behind that, or if there was any specific reasoning.
I think it was an attempt to create more protracted, interesting battles.
Oh, okay.
Think of it in the same way as a Skyrim dragon fight.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's on the ground, sometimes it's in the air.
yeah,
Sometimes you're trying to do drive-bys. Most of the time, you're trying to get it on the ground so you can whack it and kill it to death. You know,
yeah,
with the Deathclaw, I think they wanted to convey a different like style of creature and of combat and of like action, basically
yeah,
action.
yeah,
Um, and unfortunately, I think you just can't like beef up the hit points and then expect that to like work out because the way modifiers work and multipliers and all these things in games, it becomes kind of easy to then
yeah,
not if not cheese fights like that, just like they're not hard. Like
Yeah.
here you have the Mirelurk King, Mirelurk Queen,
yeah,
spitting huge puddles of like slime like directly at you like every 3 seconds.
yeah,
No matter like where you are on the map, like that will mess you up. I think it did result in a little bit less danger with the death claws in Fallout 4, which is too bad. Which is
yeah,
too bad. Yeah, because the ones in Fallout 3 jumped at you,
yeah,
and so they can
yeah,
close the distance real quick. And there's less emphasis on making them look good in the animations, because their just
mhm,
animation system sucked back then. And then in Fallout 4, you see it like like it's like
yeah,
doing all kinds of
Yeah.
things, and it looks amazing. But
yeah,
all that is just time that's being spent in showing you how it turns to get to you and everything like that, and you're just shooting at it the whole time. In
yeah,
Fallout 3, like the model just basically rotates at you, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
like that's it.
I think that makes it a
Um,
little scarier too, because you know that there's not a ton of frames
oh yeah,
between when it's going to lunge at you. You have to make a lot of use of like the map around you and cover and distance that you can put between you and the death claw.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I think if whenever they make a Fallout 5, they need to like balance that because I think there is a lot of potential for action, and when you're fighting one, you do want to feel like this is fucking crazy. Like this is
yeah, totally.
like look at that fucking thing. Like you want to feel that way as well. But I think
Yeah,
you also have to simulate the actual like experience of fighting a Deathclaw, which would be it would close the distance as fast as possible, and then it would just rake you
yeah,
back and forth, like into shreds until you were dead. And that's scary when you're like, when you've been playing a game and you've been tactically killing these people and having a firefight with these people, and then suddenly something just comes out of nowhere and just chops off your head in like 2 hits.
yeah,
That's
It's a force to
scary,
reckon with.
you
Yeah.
know.
yeah. I
And,
mean,
that's what instills also a feeling of that the wasteland is bigger than you.
yeah,
That like, and I think there's a thing with Bethesda games where ultimately I think it's the right decision marketing wise. They make you feel powerful and they're pretty easy. They make you feel it feels like you're having difficulties, but really like you're just crushing everything in your path. That's why these things are so addictive in some ways. I think we like to say like, oh, there should be a good combination of like between that and like Elden Ring hard. And I don't know. I think it just depends on the game. But I think the ease at which you kind of master the wasteland in like Fallout 4 versus something like Fallout 3. Um, yeah, it's a little. It kind of makes you lose respect for the wasteland, and like
it does.
they make me
Yeah.
feel too godlike.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there is like a survival mode or something that tries to make it harder, but yeah, that I think that's probably why I still gravitate to Fallout 3 till this day. I mean, besides I gravitate towards the story and the aesthetic more anyways.
Yeah.
But just because I feel like in Fallout 3 the wasteland humbles you constantly. Where in Fallout 4, it feels like you're the hero of the wasteland. And there's a huge difference of like you just being a wastelander navigating the wasteland, and then you being like the hero of it. Um, but
Yeah.
I do think there's also like different familiarities that players form with a game. Like with like a game like Elden Ring, for instance, players will have to spend like hours, hundreds of hours on the same boss, understanding its attack patterns and how it's going to play out every single time. Whereas a game where you are kind of a little more godlike and just crushing everything in your path, it in Bethesda's case lets you explore this wonderful large land that they've built and like gain narrative glimpses while you're running through everything. So it's a little more of like exploration versus like hardcore memorization.
Exactly. Because I think also, the Elden Ring gameplay loop is very short and very small.
Right.
You
It's
know, and
perfecting it down to a precise
it's
input.
perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Like it's a perfect game for what it is, but you can't have that level of detail in a game made by Bethesda because so many players are coming into it looking for so many things,
Right. They want
and
to
and
look in
if
that
they just
crevice.
keep
What's over
getting
there?
yeah, exactly. So they're spending a lot of time like feeling wonder and feeling curiosity and mystery and excitement, and if they just keep coming to like getting their butt stomped, again and again and again by this boss fight, they're going to be like, this is, that's not the game they came for.
Right.
Whereas I think there's other people who, like you think about an old school like um, Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter player. This is somebody who knows moves, right? Who knows how to
yeah,
time things, who knows how to like whatever. And that's a game in and of itself. It's a game of timing and attention and all these things. And so in Elden Ring, you're just going from one of those to another. Boom, boom, boom. Like, oh, it's this one. Oh, this one's gonna be fun. Oh, this is gonna be a bitch. Like,
yeah.
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 Um, so another person from the podcast, Shay, the who plays he's the one that plays the Mr. Handy bot. He texted me and asked it. He said that he wanted to ask you if you knew of the impact that your designs would have while you were working on it. He said that it kind of reminded him of like Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford when they were working on Star Wars, like how they just thought that was like a cult classic sci-fi movie, and then it blew up into this huge thing. Did you kind of feel that way with Fallout, or did you kind of know that it was going to be this huge hit going in, since there was already the pre-established, fan base from the first two games?
Yeah, good question. I did not feel convinced because there was such a difference between Interplay's 2D version and ours, and
Mm-hmm.
we were aiming for like an Xbox crowd and things like that, like
Yeah.
largely, and so there's a big question as to like, in my mind especially, like, yes, the Fallout players are hardcore, but like, exactly how many of them are there out there
Yeah.
compared to
Mm-hmm.
like Halo players, compared to all these things, and like, can we really bring this franchise like to these people in the right way? And also, there's a big question as to like, we just did Oblivion. We only have a team of like 50. We're gonna now do like a running, gunning, like different, completely different everything. Um, and everyone's already saying, "Oh, it's Oblivion with guns," which is not fair at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so, um, but with the pedigree of Oblivion
Mm-hmm.
and Morrowind at our backs, I think everyone there felt that we had the potential to do
Okay.
something really cool, and we had like leadership. Like people believed in Todd. People believed that Todd would guide us there. I think, um, and yeah, and and listen. And when it came out, listen, reception was mixed. Like
Mm-hmm.
it had a lot of issues, and there was a lot of mixed reviews. Generally, people really liked it, but it was mixed.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a feeling after Fallout 3 that like we needed to do like to hit that level and higher. Like we had to like that was because it was such a major transition in many ways. By the end of Fallout, I think we had like 75 people, so we've been hiring
Okay.
and getting people up to speed, and like with the new everything.
Yeah.
And so I think Fallout 3 was just like a time of like a lot of change and a lot of like growth and a lot of excitement. And so I think people were really excited and thought it could be really good. But we also didn't know what we were. It was a whole new world for us. We'd never done Fallout before, and Fallout wasn't. Again, like you got started on Fallout 3, right?
Yeah.
Like Fallout stuff wasn't nearly everywhere as the way it is now.
Right. I
Yeah,
do
and
think like the popularity of TV shows made out of video games is wild in terms of the outreach it allows the artists of the game's work to reach like people who aren't even gamers, who don't even play the video. I know plenty of people who have seen like the Fallout TV show but have never like picked up a controller in their life and who enjoy those designs in that world now.
Totally, totally. This is why I'm hoping that they don't change the look of the Deathclaw.
Yeah.
Put
yeah.
it in the show. If they change the look of the Deathclaw, I'll be very sad and very disappointed because, in my opinion, this is the only creature I will stand by with in this of everything I've ever made at Bethesda. That Deathclaw is perfect. I pour it like it's supposed to
Yeah.
be like you like not everyone has to like that design,
Yeah.
but it's my best
I love
design ever. And
Yeah. It's pretty
so
awesome.
I'm really proud of it. So if the on the TV show I see my version of the Deathclaw, I will die a happy man.
I hope that's
Based
what we see.
based on the skull that
Yeah.
we see at the last second to last shot of the first season, that looks like my Deathclaw, and so
Oh.
I'm pretty amped about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that was a great segue. So it sounds like you were pretty happy with the show, or
Oh, yeah.
what were your thoughts about it?
I think it's a very hard world to get right.
Yeah.
It's very bold, but also very nuanced in many ways. It's got a very particular feel to it, and the themes are like very resonant. They're like really kind of important and critical to like the backdrop of the world. The commercialization, the nationalism, the jingoism, like the kind of like 1950s, like everything is great when like actually there's like so many horrible things going on.
Yeah.
And people are just dancing on the knife edge of like nuclear oblivion, with like flirting with other, flirting with nuclear oblivion with other countries.
Yeah.
It's a great backdrop, and it's a uniquely American title. This is why I wasn't sure if they could do a good job with Fallout London, because I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fallout is Americana, like it's
Yeah.
it's us. It's a parody of us,
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I know reviews for that are very good. But yeah, I think they did a really good job. Like, did I like every decision they made? Definitely not. But like, I think it's a really hard world to get. I liked all the characters. I thought the flashbacks to like the ghouls' former life were like some of my favorite.
Same.
And there was, I think the moment when I realized that they really got it, that they like get it, was in one of those like black and white, like we're filming like a Vault-Tec ad, and our main character, whatever his name, what's his name again?
Cooper Howard, I believe. Is that who
Cooper
you're talking
Howard?
about? Yeah, the
Yeah.
ghoul.
hmm
Yeah.
He's talking to the camera and walking down the street, the halls of Vault-Tec, like just smoking a cigarette, and then the next shot he's like bending down next to like the kid eating cereal, like with a cigarette right there, like talking to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, in that moment, I was like, you get it,
Yeah.
like you get it, you get it. Like it's just it's so the nuance, like but it's there,
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and I think they made a really good decision to keep the story as small as possible,
Yeah.
I
because
agree. A video game is just far more immersive of a media than a show could ever be. So sticking to getting the themes and the feeling right was a good call.
you're trying to introduce whole new audiences to this world. You don't want to overwhelm them.
Right.
And so I think they mentioned the Enclave, but they only mention it, and we've seen like sinister scientists, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, like you don't even need to really know who they are, really. Like you might want
Yeah.
to, but you don't need to know to enjoy the scene and to enjoy and to kind of figure out what's going on. Okay, there's different,
I mean, that's
factions, etc.
the Enclave are mysterious in themselves. That's how they've always been, anyway. Yeah. Since you created the feral ghouls, the thing that I was wondering about specifically with the show was how did you feel about them like I don't know, the jet or whatever, so then they didn't turn feral. I was wondering your thoughts on that, because we have a player that is he's a non-feral ghoul, and I was curious. It was like,
Yeah, I don't love that idea.
yeah, neither I didn't either
I don't,
personally.
yeah, I don't. I understand and I respect it, and I'm willing to put up with it for the sake of the show, because
Yeah.
I think when there's this like vulnerability now presented to the character of the ghoul is like a little cartoonish, obviously, he's
Mhm.
a little too unstoppable, a little too cool, all these things, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like he's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Um, so for some reason we all just love like a really cocky ghoul, like
Yeah.
whether it's
Well,
Hancock or Charon
yeah.
or whatever, like it's because it's like a skull faced man, it's weird and creepy. Um, but I think that having the knife like hanging over his head at any given point, like, hey, you could go feral if he doesn't have this thing. You could go feral, like, and he dies if he doesn't get this, intake. I think that's probably a smart idea, and I think it's the kind of thing that could probably, if they don't cheese it too badly,
Yeah.
they can get mileage out of in a story wise in various ways, because you need sticks and carrots for characters, and you need kryptonites and things like that. It helps
Absolutely.
to make something richer.
Um. Uh, I absolutely agree with that. I was just kind of looking through. I have I wrote down all kinds of questions for you. Um, but yeah, the biggest thing that shocked me about the show was the nuking of Shady Sands. That blew my mind. I was not expecting that. And being going back and playing Fallout 1 and 2 and knowing like all the lore of the NCR and how big of a deal that is, that threw me for a loop. But
Yeah, it's cool.
Made for an
Yeah, it's
intense
really cool.
finale.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um So I don't mean to circle back around to your death clause too much. But one of the questions I have on here that I was very interested in is in previous installments of Fallout, I believe it was in Fallout 2, there was intelligent death clause.
Mhm.
What's your take on that? Like, do you? I know that you created this really really cool design of a ferocious monster, but like, have you ever thought of like what an intelligent one would look like? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never liked the idea of talking Deathclaws.
okay.
I think the idea of a talking Deathclaw is stupid because its
That's
anatomy is just
valid.
completely different.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah,
can't, it
that's
can't
valid.
purse its lips because it doesn't have lips, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But with that said, I'm actually, the Deathclaw is not a horrible mutant. It's a genetically engineered hunter-killer animal. So I'm very comfortable with it having an unnaturally high level of intelligence.
Hmm.
If Deathclaws learned how to open doors, I wouldn't be surprised. Like that wouldn't surprise me. I would like to see that. If
Yeah.
Deathclaws had some basic, even if they were like pressed buttons or something like that, like they could be, even if they went as far as to be like they can understand human language, like I would buy that too. I'm not saying they should. I don't think they should. But if people decide to like make that decision, I'm with it. That sounds good.
That's fair.
Don't make it talk to me. Don't let it put on a
That's
suit.
fair.
This is not like the gecko chameleon. This
Yeah.
is a wildly different animal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think they should be smart.
Mm,
They
that's fair.
don't, but I mean, smart in terms of like being able to communicate.
Yeah.
But but yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know
No,
what
I always thought that fell into the wacky wasteland type part of Fallout. That's just like, hey, let's just this weird quirkiness. Um,
Yeah, I
but
think it was easier in games like Fallout 1 and 2 when like everything's still new. You're kind of making it up. You're just having fun. So like
yeah,
you can have these little one-off characters that are talking, but
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think the reason why I wanted to ask that question mostly was I think there's a part of me that wants to like the idea of a non like bad or evil Deathclaw. Like if that makes any sense,
Oh yeah.
like it'd be cool to have like a Deathclaw companion,
Oh yeah.
like your dog meat, if you will, but a Deathclaw. And
You absolutely
so
should. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
totally about that. Except for how like utterly game changing it would be.
Yeah, it would be super OP. It'd be
It would
so
be super
strong.
OP. But yeah, it would be the coolest thing ever. Like I definitely want a pet Deathclaw. Like you can imagine. In fact, one of the details I put in the Deathclaw that
Mhm,
is it's very minor, but I think it's very important to how people
mhm,
feel about Deathclaws
mhm.
is its snout and its nose.
Oh.
Because if you notice it, it's got unique coloring in Fallout 4. It's
Mhm,
much darker and blacker up on its head and crown and around its eyes, and then it gets
mhm.
really pale around the snout,
Yeah.
almost like a dog, kind of. And
Right.
Oh.
if you look at its nose and everything, it's the closest that the skin ever comes to getting kind of pink a little bit, and
Hmm.
the flesh just looks softer there.
Yeah.
And I think it basically creates like a boopability factor,
It
where it's
does.
like like suddenly, like I really more than anything like want to lay my hand on a Deathclaw's nose.
Yeah.
Like in that scene in Jurassic Park when she touches the
Hmm.
brontosaurus. Like
Yeah.
that, and that's like the biggest feeling ever, right? Yeah,
There have
Yeah.
to be Wastelanders who look at them and think like, I should tame that, or I should try it, or I would look
yep,
really cool if I had a couple of those on a,
yeah,
collar and
yeah.
chain. Yeah,
Catching them is the hard part. Yeah,
it would
yeah.
be difficult.
Um. So. Um. So yeah. I have. So I know that you worked on the maypole, and
Hmm.
that has been something that I've always thought was super interesting. Um. Because I know, not only because it's this huge, enormous like boss of a creature, but just the fact that it got cut from the game. And so I wanted to ask you about that. But I also was wondering, in addition to the maypole, was there anything that you wish that you could have created for the like Fallout? Like even like if it was something original or something else that you wish that you could have added to the franchise.
Yeah. So yeah, common misconception about the maypole is that it was never cut because
Oh, okay.
it was never on the schedule.
Oh,
So
okay,
um,
fair.
yeah, so I made that Deathclaw at home, right?
Mhm,
And then I was like, well, here I am. I'm leaving. Like I have a little bit of bandwidth at the very end. Like what can I squeeze in at the end here and like
mhm,
what can I give my team to do with whatever to do with whatever they wanted to do with it?
mhm.
Like as like a parting gift to them and to the fans, and like get one more piece of Jonah like in Fallout 4. And I thought for a long time about maybe doing the Wanamingo, and I kind of started it a little bit. And I was kind of like, just don't know if I'm interested in the Wanamingo. And but that's how I conceived of the maypole is because I wanted something the likes of which I'd never seen before in Fallout. And I think something as big as the maypole as like kind of atmosphere and like game changing like about this like apocalyptic looking figure on the horizon.
Mhm.
I was like, that is an image that will stay with people. Like
Oh yeah.
that will be like an
That's the
iconic.
poster.
Yeah, that's the poster,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the thing. Um, and but like you can't just throw like a 120-foot like monster into like a Bethesda game and expect it to like if everyone be like, yeah, great, sounds good, like we'll do it. It'll literally break the world, right? Like it'll break everything. Um, but yeah, I was inspired by Giacometti's Walking Man. If you've ever seen a picture of this statue,
Mhm.
it's if you're listening right now, just Google it. Giacometti is like Giacometti, whatever, or just look up Walking Man. It's a very skinny man. It's cast in bronze, and it's like made with like hand pressed clay. And so I wanted this feeling of like unnaturally skinny, unnaturally tall, very skeletal thing. And I didn't want it to look menacing in and of itself. I didn't want it to look like it walked around looking for people to eat. I wanted to make it a walking elemental of like pain and agony. And basically, I think one thing that's really people need to always kind of recenter on if you ever want to tackle the Fallout franchise is that what's overhanging everything, every single thing in the entire world is the specter of nuclear war. Um, and having an actual specter of nuclear war, like walking slowly across the wasteland and making like a wailing sound and like dragging huge clouds of radiation wherever it goes, and I named it Maypole because I was like, it's so big, it's like the biggest glowing one ever. And glowing ones, what do? Their radiation heals the feral ghouls around them. So what if there's this like man, this like creature that was just ever so slowly every year growing a little bit bigger every year, every year, every year. A, that's an old school idea. Attack of the 50-foot man or whatever. Like that's retro. That's Fallout, you know?
Hmm.
And then having him be so big that as he went, he just like transformed the atmosphere around you. Like everything starts looking like the glowing sea when he's nearby. And then you have these like legions of like shrieking feral ghouls following around his feet like children, you know, like at the fair. And it's just like a nightmarish,
It's so cool though.
epic scene, you know? And like
Yeah.
I imagine whole towns and settlements like shutting down and like all putting up like basically like radiation shields and like waiting for him to pass
Yeah.
because like it would be really cool. It'd be really cool. I even had this like, and then I had this idea of like basically the only way you kill him is like through a specific quest. Like you have to
It
do
has
this
to be
quest.
through, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And
like
so
drop a nuke.
so then he can like die in this one place. And I was even thinking he wouldn't even die. You would just knock him over.
Yeah.
And like the dude just can't get up. Like he just can't ever get up again, right?
Yeah.
And so then wouldn't that be wild, you know, to like have this character here? And then what if like suddenly like you have little camps of like different factions springing up nearby because it turns out harvesting huge amounts of radioactive meat is like you can power facilities with that. So now you have quest options of this around this giant maypole creature that's still wailing in pain. I mean,
That'd be pretty cool.
it
Yeah.
just writes itself. You could do so much
Yeah.
with it, you know. And I think
Had the idea for a story of a village that kept repeatedly cutting off the head of hydras to feed themselves until it became too big of a threat to contain. And it kind
ooh,
of
I
has a
like
similar
that a
feeling
lot.
of like just using this
Very cooler.
massive monster and its corpse and body's natural abilities for like crisis diversion. It's never really problem solved because it's still there and looming, but
Still there,
you've
yeah,
dealt with it
yeah.
for
And
the time being and made a positive of it.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Anyway,
Well,
that's my whole spiel on um, the Maypole. And I think also
mm,
last thing I'll say on the matter is I think that Fallout has very powerful, very potent, like iconic elements.
mhm.
The Pip Boy, Vault Boy, and I guess the music, you know,
Yeah.
and the general 1950s futuristic aesthetic. But I think what I'm seeing as the franchise goes on is there's a over reliance on the same factions and whatever. Like I don't think the Brotherhood of Steel is like that interesting, you know. So I think like you got to have new elements into the world. And for me, I was like, if you add this, yes, it changes everything, but like it just ups the ante completely in a very literal and big way, you know. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't have to program any of that. I'm just the
Yeah.
guy who
Yeah.
makes the art. So
So I
I don't
mean,
blame anyone for not using it.
so so was there anything else that you wish that you would have added to the franchise, or
I would have liked to do the Wanamingo, you know.
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah. I think it's an old school fun one and I thought like I just had an idea of like using bullfrogs, you know, and just like make bullfroggy, I don't know.
That'd be awesome. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but with the time that we do have, I would love to hear more about Quiet Level One. So, and any other current projects that you have going on?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so for those who are listening,
Hmm.
I've been freelance for a number of years now, and I just launched on Kickstarter my first graphic novel ever. It's
Congratulations
called
on your
Quiet.
success on the Kickstarter, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. I'm really psyched about how that went. It was really well received, and I'm considering no one's ever heard of Quiet Level One before this. It was like a quite went quite well. But I love the world. So it's an homage to video games and fantasy and D&D. So this is kind of right up your both of your alleys.
Hmm.
And yeah, so like anyone who's listening right now, if you like video games, especially fantasy games, and you like D&D and D and you like fantasy, the genre as a whole,
Hmm.
this is definitely for you. It's a story of it's kind of the barbarian character against an undead, but flipped on its head, and the protagonist is a very small, large-headed skeleton who can't speak, who's totally quiet. Their name is Quiet, and they're forced to go up against a barbarian, an unstoppable Conan-like man, and basically Quiet has to stop Gallahorn, the barbarian, from ascending through the different levels of the world tree, which is similar to Yggdrasil, if you're familiar, if I have any Norse fan stands out there, um, and basically destroying all of reality at the top. So it's basically kind of like a race, or like basically Quiet just has to stop Gallahorn from reaching the top. And so Quiet Level 1 takes place mostly in Level 1, which is an underground labyrinth. And this is my love letter to, again, Dungeons and Dragons, but also games like Diablo, things like that, like old
Yeah.
school, like dungeon crawlers.
RPGs.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is basically, if this is an installment, and it's a hefty 200-page installment in the
Oh, wow.
story. It takes place almost entirely in this labyrinth. Um, and it's coming along really well. It's coming along really well, and so I'm working on that now. You can find it on Kickstarter. Like I said, just Google Quiet Level 1 or my name, Jonah Lobe. And I really hope that the people who are listening and you guys as well pick up a copy because um, I'm
Definitely.
working my ass off on it, and it's going to be really good. It's going to be
Yeah.
really
Looks
good. Like,
fun. Yeah.
thank you,
I'm a
I
big
appreciate it.
Hollow Knight fan as well. I kind of get a little bit of that
Yes.
aesthetic from the design I've seen of it so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. These kind of again, Hollow Knight is similar in that it's like the
Gentle, quiet
creepy,
protagonist.
but the creepy Polly kind of like
Yeah,
like night creatures kind of, but they're all cute.
right.
And in the same way, I have this like skeleton, but who's cute. I mean, the Clyde is basically the cutest skeleton you can
He's
get without it.
adorable. Oh my gosh, I want to
Yeah,
give him
he's
such a big
adorable.
hug.
Exactly, exactly. And I want people to feel that way when they look at this character. So, yeah, no, I've been working, in entertainment and fantasy for 20 years now, and I've been working in particular in characters and character design and all these things, and I'm just feeling so happy and positive about Quiet as a character, as an idea, as this book. So I'm feeling a lot of like excitement working on this. So if you liked Fallout 3 and you liked Fallout 4 and you like Skyrim
Yeah.
and you like the kind of things I do, then you might like this as well because there's a lot of like little Easter eggs also for video game lovers as well.
Yeah,
So
no, it looks great. Like the artwork and the story and everything. I was checking it out and I was like, man, I gotta get a copy of this. And then
got it.
especially when I heard that you said that his insides were like he's like a walking bag of holding. I was like, oh, I'm sold.
Oh yeah, no, he's got exactly. Well, because I was thinking of like a player's inventory, and then you
Yeah.
can just like keep putting things in there. This one of my fans made me this. I guess your listeners
Oh,
can't
Oh,
see this.
very cute. Yeah.
But it's carved from real wood. Can you believe that?
Oh, incredible.
wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And
Wow.
then one of the things you can get in the Kickstarter is these little figurines.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
they're really beautiful. They're not pewter. They're real brass. They're heavy. They're like high
Oh,
quality.
yeah.
They're made by this
Wow.
guy, the Eberforge in Greece. Anyway, these are awesome. So anyway, I get to work on this thing where before in my previous jobs, I'm working on these big games, and that was incredible. But I never got to like hold the thing that I made,
Right.
Hmm.
And so it's really fun to be like launching this and be like, I made this. I made these stickers. I made this book, like all these things, and get to like actually hand it to people. So it's a really fun, it's a really exciting element of moving into this next chapter.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But also as a character artist, you probably didn't get to do a whole lot of the world building aspect as well. And now with your own projects, you get to flesh out the whole thing.
Totally, absolutely. That's one of the reasons also that I quit being in video games because there was one, as we've been kind of waxing poetic on how beautiful it was to work at this game company
Hmm.
for 7 years and work on these great projects, and it totally was.
Hmm.
But I was one piece of a machine,
Yeah.
and being able to be the whole machine is quite a feeling compared to that. So, I think one thing I noticed, especially as I was leaving Bethesda, I was creating these assets, and I was giving what I thought were really great ideas. I created design docs and all these things, and nobody would implement any of them. And
Mm.
it was only because people have jobs for that, and
Yeah.
we don't tend to spend our time when we're making games making other people's games. We want to make the game that we want to make, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of collaboration and things like that at that company, some really beautiful ways. But if I have an idea, you can recognize that it's really good. But if you're the one actually putting the ideas into the game, you're going to be like, but I only have so much time, and I want to bring my idea in there. So again,
Mm.
I don't
I
blame
see.
anyone, but I was just like, it really highlighted to me that I am not really here to design things. I was always highly valued and treated of high value, which I really appreciate, for doing the job that I did on the monsters and character art.
Yeah.
Um,
Right, there's a difference
but
between just like creation for labor and creation for personal passion.
yeah, exactly. And not being able to kind of dabble in other areas in ways I would like, or collaborate with with other storytellers, because I am a storyteller at heart. And I think that's one thing that I wasn't getting enough of making just the creatures. I tried to make them in every inch of their skin look and feel real and to tell a story. You look at Mirelurks, the Mirelurk Kings, like the super mutants, especially the super mutants in Fallout 4, which I made. They have scars.
Yeah.
You can see the way the FEV virus gave them so much muscle, and yet has also kind of melted them a little bit, like Taffy. So you can imagine, like, yes, they have a bunch of muscle, but you can imagine their bones might even be kind of softer and like a little bit more rubberier than our bones. There's you can see them kind of deteriorating, and that they're kind of not, as pumped up as they are, they're also devolved. I try to create these stories just in the visuals alone, but you can only do so much with visuals alone.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you also worked on the giants in Skyrim, right?
Yes,
I
yes, I did.
believe I remember reading, forgive me if I'm paraphrasing, that you had modeled the male giant after the face of your father. And I
Yes,
thought I was very
yeah.
captured by that because, like, I was remembering playing through Skyrim and being, like, awestruck by, like, the presence of something older and wiser than myself. And the only
Hmm.
time I had felt that before was, like, as a child looking to my father.
Hmm.
Do you think that there is, like,
Oh,
more of that image comes from the child's imagination or like the parents' practice in portraying themselves in a certain manner or like composing themselves in a way that they'd like to model for their children?
that's interesting. That's a very deep question. I think we all want our children to perceive us in a certain way, right? Like we want to be perceived in this benevolent, godly kind of ancient light. Um, and that comes off, you can pull that off, I think, to varying degrees. But I think every child feels that their parent is a god of some kind,
Very much
or
so,
at least
yeah. We have a
an
reverence
ancient,
towards them.
somewhat unknowable being that like holds within themselves the capacity to make you happy. Whether or not they do, like even if you have a parent who's not such a great parent, who doesn't always do a good job of making you feel good, you will always want that from them, right?
Yeah.
Like you want that. This is what destroys some people, when their parent just kind of sucks at that and sucks at making you feel special and all these things. And you go through life saying, fuck them, like I don't need them. What you really want, like some part of you at least, does want them to acknowledge you and to see you and to be like, wow, like look at you. So I think I wanted to, we all have our own relationships with our parents. I get along really great with my dad. I didn't used to, when I was younger, but
Yeah.
and he's not a very tall man even, but there was something, just about his physicality around the
Mm-hmm.
house, and just seeing him and being like, that's my dad, and that feeling. And so I actually focused a lot on not just the face of the giant, but I looked at a lot of farmers
Posture
from
of
all around the
them.
world and all that, and looking at their hands
Okay.
and making, because when you're a kid, you're at hand level,
Yeah.
and you see these hands that are hanging down, and when grown-up hands are hanging down, they're all like vascular and kind of, like they got the veins in them, and they look kind of gnarled and strong and all that, kind of like a Greek
Mm-hmm.
statue kind of. And so if you look at the hands of the giants, they got some huge hands, and they really dangle down, and they're weathered, and you can see
It
like
does look like they put a lot of work like behind those hands, you know.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
They've been
exactly.
laboring and they're like plowing their little fields and everything for centuries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the giants could have been created to be like a monster in the world, like a challenging, exciting boss fight. But I really was tuned into that feeling of like I don't want people to see a hitbox with
Right.
things to get, afterwards, treasure to get. I want people to feel that the land of Skyrim is full of wonder. I want people to feel wonder, basically. And if I could, so that's kind of why I did my dad's face. The concept art looked a little bit like it because he had like a big
Mm-hmm.
nose and things like that. And I was like, I'm just gonna go the full Jim Lobe here and just like
Well, I do think the
combine a little bit,
Giants do a
combined a
great
little bit
job.
of my uncle in there as well.
Okay.
But again, like he's not ripped, right? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
strong, but he's not ripped. He looks like wiry, right? His shoulders are not that big because he's very tall, so he's got kind of narrow shoulders. He's got this kind of face, and he's got these eyebrows that are kind of they go down like this.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I was like, well, this is just a dude who stands in the rain, like in the cold Skyrim rain all the time, watching his herds. So he must have just like natural gutters that just like, like whatever. And he's mostly bald, and it's like his head is speckled with sun damage, etc. And yeah, I just wanted you to feel like this guy's been here for 200 years, and like he's not much smarter than his mammoth. He's not so smart,
Right.
but he's peaceful, and all he wants to do is all day is watch his mammoth because they give him cheese, they give him meat, they're his
I
friends,
do like that they
whatever.
aren't immediately hostile until a player like actually messes with them
Yeah.
with a mammoth. I like walking past them knowing they can, at early levels at least, absolutely wreck me if I don't
course.
keep my distance.
Of
But
course.
at higher levels, I feel confident just walking past and leaving them alone.
And
They do.
they'll shake their club at you, right? They'll be
Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
get
Get
out of
off
here.
my yard. Yeah.
But they really won't, and I did a little bit of talk about storytelling in there. The higher level ones, when they're all kind of decked out in their leather and their bones and everything, what they have like around their waist is a troll skull.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh.
And I created the troll skull just for that because I was like, I want people to feel like this thing hates trolls. Like in the ecosystem of Skyrim, like that thing hates trolls because that troll goes after a baby mammoth one night and then he's just like, no, you mother, and then just smashes them. I can totally see that happening. I did other things like that with the storytelling where, like, for instance, you see the helmet up here, the back.
Oh yeah.
The ancient Nord helm, and the women of the female Draugr wear that,
Right.
and it's basically like a Trojan helmet with like antlers. But the only other thing with antlers in the game besides the deer are the Spriggan. And I was like, if I was like an ancient Nordic Viking warrior woman, I would want to channel my sisters in nature who are like these weird fawn like antlered creatures. Like I would definitely be like, I channel fucking Spriggan, motherfucker, because Spriggan are beautiful and terrifying, right? Like so that's another one of those like storytelling like little like things that people don't need to know about, but that seems to create some kind of ecosystem.
Oh, and that's what makes them unique and special. And those are the little Easter eggs that people may or may not pick up on, but that's what makes them special.
I think the
Right,
individuality of
right.
every character design really sells the immersiveness of Bethesda games.
Yeah, well, that was my thing, right? Because I think one thing I learned, and we'll draw this to a close in a second, but I think if you look at a game like Dead Space versus a game like Doom, right?
Yeah.
Dead Space, there's quite a uniformity to the characters. All the monsters are basically the same monster, right? It's a kind of a screaming skeletal thing with broken limbs that are kind of jagged and it kind of staggers at you. And they have various iterations of that. And then you think of Doom, and you think of like the Imp versus the Pink Demon versus the Baron of Hell versus the Cyber Demon, and those are characters. And I think what we saw when we saw all the new Dooms, is id Software recognized that their demons are celebrities and that their demons are characters. They all have their own personality, and that they should focus on that, and they really did. And I was like,
minions,
and now like there's a strange and wonderful charisma to the monsters in Doom, like
Yeah.
you love to hate them. You love to hate them. And every time you see one, it doesn't matter how big and how ugly and how horrible, you're like, oh, God, it's you, motherfucker. Let's go.
I can't wait to kill you. Because now I
I
have a
can't wait
reason
to
to
kill you.
dislike you. Yeah.
Yeah, I will engage you in Mortal Kombat and I will end you. Um,
Finish him.
they did a good job with that. And so I feel like personality, if you look at my YouTube channel, I have a 5 questions about the 5 rules of character design, basically. Um, and the most important one, and the one I put first every single time, is personality.
Yeah.
What do you want people to feel when they see your work? Like that matters more than the aesthetic. What do you want people to feel? If you can make somebody feel something, both physical and like emotional, like you got them. They'll never forget.
Nice. Well, I think with that's where we'll end it. I want to thank
Right.
Jonah Lobe for your time and being on the podcast. Would you like to tell people where they can find you and find your work?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram at I am Jonah Lobe. I am on YouTube, which you should definitely follow me there at Jonah Lobe Draws. But you can just look Jonah Lobe YouTube. And for those people who are into world building and fantasy art and design, I have a Substack. It's called The Tree of Worlds, and it's all about the creation of Quiet Level 1. And most importantly, hop on Kickstarter, secure your copy of Quiet Level 1, because my aim is to basically my hope is to get it to people by the end of this year. I don't know if I can make that happen because I'm putting in the work, and I'm very pleased with like how it's going. It could be going it could be going faster, but I'm like, it's hard to feel bad about that when I'm like looking at what I've got so far, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
like
when
this
you're
is
proud of what you've made. And I think you've mentioned too in some of your other stuff that like a creative process should come from a place of like low pressure and ease, and it like really should. Like there is some
absolutely
helpfulness and motivation to being on a deadline, but I find in like my own personal creative work, I am hard to motivate if I don't have just like an environment where I can focus on what I'm doing and not external things I might be worrying about.
absolutely. At Bethesda, I was always I would not always. I was often late with an assignment.
Yeah.
I never really got in trouble. The only person that was really bothered with it was my producer, bless her heart. But because nobody else had to deal with my schedule, so they just saw the finished product, and everyone was like,
Right.
"You got it again, Jonah. Good job." And my producer's like, "Damn it, stop encouraging him, everybody." So I'm trying to be my own Angela right now. I'm trying to be like, all right, this is the deadline, and when I pass it by like a day or two, I'm like, but,
as long as you're happy with the result, that's what matters.
Yeah,
exactly. So
awesome,
guys. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for being on. Yep, and
Yeah.
as always, you can find War Never Changes on Spotify and on YouTube. So thanks again, and for being on, Jonah, and have a great night.
My pleasure. Take care, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you for being here.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Take care.
Bye.
We're all alone, no chaperone can get our number. The world's in slumber, let's misbehave. There's something wild about you, child, that's so contagious. Let's be outrageous, let's misbehave.
I don't know how much I actually filled you in. So to tell you a little bit about our podcast, so we do an actual play. So that's kind of us playing a tabletop RPG similar to like Dungeons and Dragons,
Okay.
and but the setting is based on Fallout. And
Hey.
yeah, and so I'm the DM, if you will, and so I kind of narrate the story, and I throw scenarios and stuff at my players. And
Great.
Elliot here is one of my players. And and so we collaboratively tell a story of them navigating the wasteland, essentially. And Elliot is actually playing a super mutant, which is pretty fun. And so I thought that you might kind of get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah.
I have lots
But
of
yeah,
fun playing her.
It's a female super mutant.
It is, yeah. She's very old
Awesome.
too. Like, it's
This is
old
why
as
I
I
love
know.
Dungeons and Dragons. This is great. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Okay, great. Very cool.
Yeah, and yeah, I was hoping to get the rest of the cast on, but due to scheduling conflicts and technical difficulties, they weren't able to get on. But yeah, the rest of the crew, just to fill you in really quickly before we jump in, we have a Vault Dweller, and his Vault is the Vault experiment with that is what would happen if you took just athletes and jocks and put them in a vault for 200 years. And so they're just he's not the smartest guy around, but he's very competitive and he's all about sports, which is great because the player that's playing him knows nothing about sports.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and we have a ghoul that's he was a courier before he got irradiated and turned into a ghoul. But now that he's a ghoul, he's like a gambler type. And then our last remaining party member is actually a Mr. Handy Robot. And
Nice.
he was a comic book store clerk before the war. And one day a group of raiders came in and attacked him. And so his programming got fried a little bit, and he merged with one of the Hubris comics. And so every now and then when he goes into combat, his superhero persona comes out as Mr. Unstoppable. Yeah. So he has a little...
I'm very impressed. These are very good stories.
Yeah, and so he has a little bit of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk kind of thing going on.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about those robots also, is they're so unfailingly courteous and polite and cheery.
Yep.
You love to see them go dark, you know?
Yep.
Shea does a great job portraying that.
Yeah.
It's a great personality type. It's a great like character, you know, like that's how often when franchises really stick around, it's often because they have characters that anchor a world. And the Mr. Handy prototype is just like mwah, you know?
It's so iconic.
Like, it's so iconic, and there's something so simultaneously charming and sinister about them, you know, because like they got these like long dangling arms, and they sometimes have a buzzsaw on one of them, and they're always hovering with this like heat, you know, blasting of heat underneath them. And I remember when we did the, I mean, we didn't have any part in it, but when the trailer for Fallout 4 came out, there's a moment in the trailer. I don't know if you remember where he's talking about like, you know, this is America, you know, freedom, bacon and eggs, you know, whatever, and it's showing an Americana family like, in the morning getting ready, you know, handing out cereal, making sure the kids are ready, making sure dad has his coffee, all these things. And there's a moment that Mr. Handy's hanging out by the wife, and as the dad walks by, Mr. Handy swivels his whole upper body and positions the buzzsaw right near the husband for just a second before spinning back around and leaving the shot. It's one of those small details that you're like, wait a second, did he just like quietly think about killing the father in that instant? Like, watch it again if you haven't noticed that. It's a very quick shot, but it's there.